Welcome to Shop Talks, which is a production of the In Kitchen and sponsored by Haynes and Hirsch and the Impression Show. They have free talks. They'll be recorded. You can check them out on YouTube later. If you sign up for our mailing list, we'll let you know when these talks are up, and you can check them out later as well, because bills are always dense and you might want to watch them a few times. Got my friend here, Bill Garvin from BG Tech, and he's going to talk about bobbin tension.
Good morning, everybody. All right, so first thing we're going to talk about is embroidery machines. Almost every machine out there made has a tension knob or a tension system on it, right? As far as me and my technicians working on equipment day in and day out, okay, what we always run into is people have tension problems. And the main reason being is anytime you have a problem on a piece of equipment during production and sewing Monday through Friday, the number one thing that every single person, owner, operator wants to do is reach up and start turning the tension knobs on the machine. And even though it may seem like it solves the problem, it's a temporary fix. We call that a Band-Aid. And the reason it is those tension knobs, truthfully, if you're sewing with a good quality brand of thread on your machine from the first needle to the last needle, the tension knob system is exactly the same from the first knob to the last knob. Therefore, logic dictates that all those knobs should look what? Exactly the same. But almost every customer we run into, the tension knobs look like a roller coaster. Some are screwed in really tight, some are really loose. Now, for that reason, it's not that you don't ever use a tension knob on your machine, but the reason they are on there is for specialty threads. Standard thread in our industry is a 40-weight polyester or a 48 rayon, and once you have tension set on a machine, you can set it and forget it. The factors that change that on your machine on a regular basis, okay, is threaded wrong. When it doesn't feel right, when you rethread, you thread a needle, don't stare at it for 10 minutes trying to figure out what's threaded wrong. You're professional embroiderers. Just rethread that needle from the cone down to the needle, and 9 times out of 10, whatever the issue was actually just goes away. The other problem is the lint, dust, and fuzz. We nonstop get those little lint dust bunnies that pile up on your cones of thread, come through the tensioning system, and they want to set right at the top of those tension discs. And then they'll get pulled in. Now the tension's wrong, and you're compensating by turning the tension knobs. You know, most people think that the machine just magically changes tensions overnight. There's no 2 a.m. tension fairy that comes into your shop to mess with your embroidery machine. If you're turning the knobs on a regular basis, you are the tension fairy, okay? Now, what we're going to cover, and the reason I'm even having this talk right now, is we're going to talk about the one item that causes 85% of your sewing issues, day in and day out. It's the number one maintenance item on your machine. It is the only item that an operator has to take care of not once a day, but twice a day. Okay, the only maintenance daily done on any type of embroidery machine is blow out, clean the rotary hook, and oil the rotary hook. Guess what lives inside the rotary hook? The bobbin case. The bobbin case on average costs about $8 on a machine. So almost always, 85% of the time, if you're having a tension problem, okay, the problem is the $8 bobbin case, not the $18,000 sewing machine that you have. So if your tension knobs are all over the place, you got to fix that to start with, okay? Me and my techs do it with just simply a tension test, whether we're servicing, repairing DC 12 head Tajimas from 1996 that are over 20 years old, or a brand new Barrett 6 head install. We run the same test no matter what we do. If we install, we service, we got test files that we sew to make sure the machine's 100% before we start teaching it or let it go back into production. So what I'm going to do is pass around, first thing is this little sew out I did. Now I did this last week when I was up at Imprint Canada, okay, doing a tension seminar. Just 4 little H's. I just sewed 4 to make it simple instead of 15, okay? Ideal tensions is called a 1/3 pull. You'll be able to see that on the back on the first row of the H's that I sewed, okay? The second row, I simply took the bobbin case out, did not touch a top tension knob at all, okay? And all I did was turned the little screw on the bobbin case tighter a half a turn, just a half a turn. And now the bobbin becomes too tight. It's winning the tug of war, pulling more color thread under the bottom of the embroidery. And if it goes too far past that, or the top tension is loose because somebody's been loosening it when they shouldn't have to or should be doing it, now you're on the verge of a bird's nest. That's because it's only got one place to go after you see no bobbin thread. It's in the needle plate hole, and it takes the shirt with it, okay? And that's a bird's nest. Now the bottom row, I simply turned it back the half a turn, and then I loosened it a half a turn to the left. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, right? And now the bobbin is too loose. Again, the top is not altered. It is not changed. The exact same machine, all sewed within 10 minutes of just restarting that little 4 colors and letting it sew again and again. Okay? And you can see now that we have too much white thread appearing on here, right? And if you look on the top, you'll actually see a little bit of white thread starting to appear on the top of the embroidery. Now, one other thing you got to notice too about tensions when you got a multi-head, let's say you got a 6-head machine, sometimes that little 1mm satin stitch don't line up on head number 4 like it lines up on the rest of the heads. Your bobbin may be too tight. If you turn that H-test at an angle and look at it, you will actually notice that the second row of H's are thinner than the top and the bottom, because the tighter the bobbin is set, the more the embroidery pulls. The more pull that you actually have, the thinner the column becomes. So you can have registration problems on really tight, thin outlines, okay? So that's all just from adjusting a bobbin, because what gets dirty, what needs to be clean, what needs to be maintained is an $8 bobbin case. Now, with that being said, if you are doing your maintenance first thing in the morning and immediately after lunch, that is open up the hook cover, take out the bobbin case, blow it out, and yes, air compressors work way better than canned air, okay? Way better. They do the job 10 times better, far less expensive, and not as hazardous. Canned air has to clearly say fatal or death on the can, so don't let kids play with that stuff, right? So with that being said, that bobbin case lives its entire life in the rotary hook. If the hook stays clean, the bobbin case stays clean, so it's rare that you even have to clean it, okay? But if you do, I'm gonna pass around 2 bobbin cases here. The first one is a bad bobbin case. And what you'll notice is the flat piece of metal on the side that's held by the 2 screws, right? That right there is what creates tension on the bobbin thread. Guys, it is nothing but a curved piece of metal. It's called the tension spring. It only creates tension at the very tip, okay? Nowhere in underneath of it. So if you don't clean it properly and you keep adjusting it, you'll flatten the spring like that one is, and you will destroy the case. Nobody sells parts to an $8 bobbin case. Make sense? Now here's a good one, and I'll pass it around. It has 2 things you'll notice. One, I've got a bobbin case cleaner in it. The cleaner or a business card should be able to slide easily in underneath where the arc is without any lifting, prying, or pressure. If you can do that, that means it's still a good bobbin case. Guys, this one also has the blue tension spring on the inside of it. Some are blue, some are black. You always take these out and throw them away, or you buy your bobbin cases without that spring inside. The only bobbin made that needs that blue spring on the inside is metal bobbin cases, if you wind your own bobbins, because metal against metal is too smooth, and after a stitch is created, it'll continue to spin, so on the next stitch, too much bobbin thread is available. You might see some white thread on top, just like that test that I just passed around, right? Now, if you see that, you normally don't have to remove all the stitches. It's still nice, tight, clean embroidery. You just see those little specks of white. How do we fix that? He says a color pen. I refer to it as liquid thread. They're called Sharpies, people. Sam's Club, 30-pack, $14, comes in all kinds of colors. Now, the trick to the liquid thread, the Sharpies, fabric markers that we're talking about, say you're sewing red, like you see the specks of white on the sample I just passed around in red thread, and you got a little bit of white. Problem is, you always try to use a red pen. When you use a red pen, it dyes darker. so it looks like burgundy, sticks out like a sore thumb. The trick is always use a lighter shade of the same color. You touch red up with orange. Dab it, it'll dry lighter. So dab it again, and then it'll blend right in, and not even your customer will know that you had to use a marker on their $50 polo. And you do what everybody else does. It goes 3 shirts down in the box, and the order goes out the door, right? So what I'm going to do is show you how, if you got a properly tensioned bobbin case, doing the drop test. So this test has been around forever. Now you can use there's a lot of different types of jigs out there, okay? Tension gauges is what they call them. There's a little cheap $4 one. It's a little spring jig that you wrap thread around and you pull it, right? And there's a little bit more expensive ones that you can drop a bobbin case in and wind it through and pull, and it's a little analog on there. They all work, but the difference is they work different for different people. You pull fast, she pulls slow, you're going to read a different number on the gauge, okay? But not right or wrong. So I'm going to show you how to do a drop test on a bobbin case. The first thing everybody does wrong, okay, is they wrap the pigtail and they try to feel or check the tension on a bobbin case. If you do that, it pitches it forward, and you try the drop test, it just hits the floor, okay? You don't feel, check, or test tension in the pigtail. The only reason a pigtail even exists on a bobbin case is because your commercial embroidery machines have a trimming system. And that trimming system on every machine is at the 12 o'clock position. The pigtail is designed to hold the thread directly at the 12 o'clock position for the trimming mechanisms. That's the picker, the trimmer under the needle plate opening and closing, the wiper coming down grabbing the thread. I can snap a pigtail off, put it in a machine, and it will sew perfectly. I might have some issues with some pullouts because the thread's not being held right in the correct position as far as the trimming system's concerned, okay? Now the first thing you'll notice, it's got to support its own weight. So I'm in. Counterclockwise is how all rotary hook machines sew. That's also the way it has to spin inside your machine. If you're not sure, once you put it in your machine, pull the thread, the bobbin case has to be spinning counterclockwise. If it spins clockwise in your machine, you're actually threading your bobbin backwards. So instead of the thread coming off the direction of the wind in the direction of the stitch, it's going opposite. That can cause random looping issues in your design, even though it'll still sew pretty well. And another reason you want to reach up and start turning tension knobs on your machine. So hold out about a foot of thread. Now for reference, and I'm teaching somebody, I just like to use a Sharpie. It's called liquid thread, remember that. All right? So I take my Sharpie, hold out about a foot of thread. If you sew with poly, you sew with rayon, you sew with 40 weight thread, you sew with 60 weight thread, you're going to set your bobbin tension the same. Now to do this test, guys, it's arm down, it is arm up. If you do it correctly, the thread will not slack between my hand and the case because I don't want to jerk it. You don't bend it more than your wrist because it's not a yo-yo, okay? And you don't shake it because it's not your husband, all right? So it's arm down, arm up. And what we have to achieve is a 1 to 3 inch drop on the bobbin case. Arm down, arm up, arm down, arm up. Now if you look, my black mark was here. Now it's setting here. I actually wore a white shirt on purpose, so on camera you should be able to see that black mark. Okay? So it's about 3 inches up. If you're not sure what that is, it's the length of your index finger. No matter how big or small your hand is, because I'm going to show you another little trick here in just a second. Arm down, arm up. Now it's moved up to here. Arm down, arm up. Now, once you know it's right, because sooner or later you know what it's supposed to feel like, correct? Now you wrap the pigtail. Under no circumstances do you ever use the hinge door to put a bobbin case in, because you always have to hear the click when it goes in. If not, it'll fall out. Instant bird's nest, maybe hook out of time, putting money in your cuss jar and calling a technician that can get there in 3 weeks to fix your machine. So thread straight over the front, thumb and forefinger, thumb in the front, forefinger in the back. How many fingers do I have left? 3. It's called the 3-finger rule. Snap the thread at your pinky. This leaves 3 inches of thread. This is the correct amount of thread for your machine to start sewing again. If you cut it too short and put it in, there's not enough thread for the top thread to connect on the first 1 to 3 stitches, and then your take-up lever yanks the thread straight out of the needle, and you get to become a professional needle threader instead of a professional embroiderer. If you leave it too long, guys, this thread can catch and wrap behind the back of your rotary hook. And if you continue to let it do that, thread can pile up so bad behind a rotary hook, it'll push a hook forward and throw it out of time and start snapping needles. And that's just because over a period of time, which literally could be months, people have a bad habit of leaving that 12 inches worth of thread laying out. Because as it starts to sew, it'll start wrapping the thread behind. It'll create stitches and wrap thread behind the hook all at the same time. Snap, always hear it in. Make sense? Now, the number one thing that me and my techs run into servicing machines, and the reason everybody's messing with their tension knobs, and it's what causes all of your issues as far as ruining the garments, possibly having hook timing problems, is the bobbin case is always too tight at almost every customers that we go to. A lot of the times, if I service a machine that's a single head and it was 5 years ago, I could go see that customer tomorrow, and guess where the tension knobs will be? The exact same place I left them 5 years ago, because I teach them all of this as I service the machine. So they know how to take care of it and know how to maintain it. The hook area, your embroidery machine, you know the lint, dust, and fuzz that piles up so bad? Guys, I don't care if your machine is 10 years old or 20 years old. Guess what your machine's supposed to look like? It's supposed to look like it did the day it was delivered. If you want consistent sewing on Friday like Monday, in December like January. But a bobbin being too tight and way too tight, for example, no drop, right? Definitely supporting its own weight. But I should never be able to do this to a bobbin case. Yippee-ki-yay, right? And you'd be surprised how many times we run into that, because you'll feel it. It's too tight. If it has no drop, you're on the verge of a bird's nest. The last little hint I'll give you is this. If you feel your top tensions and you feel your bobbin tension, again, not in the pigtail, under no circumstances will the bobbin ever feel tighter than the top. If it does, you're going to be bird's nesting on your machine. Hope you enjoyed this morning, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill Garvin. Entertaining and informative as always.